Welcome to The Explainer. We're jumping right into something massive today. On August 1st, 2026, the rules for evaluating artificial intelligence are going to change dramatically. But here's the catch. They aren't changing in public. It's all happening behind closed doors. This is a monumental shift that's going to totally rewire how we measure and define safe AI.
So, who actually decides if an AI is dangerous? And honestly, what happens when those rules go classified? In exactly 3 weeks from right now, the most consequential document in AI evaluation goes into effect. And, well, nobody outside a cleared facility will ever get to read it. It's a huge structural shakeup for the whole industry. And today, we're going to unpack exactly what this means for the future of AI.
Section 1. The surface. Let's look at the actual facts of Executive Order 14409. If we strip away all the political framing from President Trump's June 2nd executive order, it actually does 4 really concrete things. First up, it establishes a classified cyber capability benchmark. Second, it builds a voluntary pre-release access framework for AI models. Third, it sets up an AI cybersecurity clearinghouse under the Treasury to pool vulnerability intel. And fourth, it directs some major funding and hiring toward federal cyber talent. What we're looking at here is a massive posture shift toward heavy NSA and Treasury oversight over AI. I mean, this level of involvement simply didn't exist 6 months ago.
Now, what's really interesting about this new setup is the creation of something called a covered frontier model. And get this, the ultimate call on which models get this designation rests squarely with the NSA director, working alongside agencies like CISA and NIST. The director is going to make these designation calls based on classified cyber capability thresholds that absolutely have to be stood up by that looming August 1st deadline. 30 days. Alongside that classified benchmarking process, the order creates a voluntary framework that essentially invites developers to hand the federal government access to their covered models for up to 30 days before public release. Think about that. That is a full month of government evaluation, with assessments shared back to the developers before a product ever even hits the public market.
Section 2. The reality. Let's dig into this voluntary pre-release access. Okay, let's dive into this. To really grasp how this operates in the real world, you got to remember that words in Washington often carry some heavy secondary meanings. I absolutely love how legal analysts have already described this. To quote them, it's voluntary with an asterisk the size of a procurement budget. The crucial point here is that deep underlying tension between the word voluntary and these massive federal incentives. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a subtle mandate. This order is actually a second attempt. An earlier version was reportedly pulled over concerns it would stifle U.S. competitiveness. So this surviving text leans super hard on voluntary collaboration rather than strict rules.
But let's look at the accounting question this creates. In a de jure or formal legal sense, participation is formally opt-in. The order explicitly disclaims mandatory licensing. But the de facto reality? It's quite different. Participation grants developers trusted partner status. And since the U.S. government is literally the largest buyer of technology on Earth, if they prefer vendors who opt in, well, that distinction between voluntary and mandatory pretty much vanishes for any company that wants federal contracts. And there's actually already a precedent showing the government is more than willing to step in when its benchmarks flash red. A Congressional Research Service brief neutrally notes that the administration previously required Anthropic to suspend access to a frontier AI model after it showed advanced cyber capabilities. This brilliantly proves the operational reality here. Capability assessments already have real teeth, and this new executive order is simply formalizing the measuring stick. Why this matters to you is that the cutting-edge tools you rely on every day could quietly vanish or get delayed based on these exact unseen federal tests.
Section 3. The structural dilemma. Let's talk about these classified goalposts.
So, let's objectively break down both sides of this incredibly difficult choice. The bull case supports the order, arguing that treating AI cyber capabilities like weapons-adjacent tech absolutely protects national security. The logic is, if you publish exactly what the NSA tests for, you essentially hand adversaries an instruction manual and invite them to just teach to the test. But on the flip side, the bear case points out that benchmarks are the epistemic foundation of AI governance. Having classified, unfalsifiable goalposts means the process totally lacks accountability. A secret benchmark could quietly drift in code vendor biases or honestly just be flat out wrong, and no public researcher will ever be able to challenge it.
This structural dilemma has led to some wildly diverging approaches globally. The U.S. executive order approach is highly sophisticated but totally classified. Now contrast that with the European Union's AI Act. They use a systemic risk threshold for general-purpose models set at 10 to the 25th power FLOPS of training compute. It's widely criticized as a bit crude, and it arguably measures the wrong thing. But crucially, it's public, it's contestable, and it's identical for everyone. This dynamic of crude and public versus sophisticated and classified is a genuine monumental dilemma right now.
Section 4. Global Ripple Effects. Let's look at the 3 seats at the table.
So how does a U.S. domestic policy change the international landscape? Well, this brilliantly illustrates the quiet destabilizer in the whole design, the massive asymmetry. While U.S. frontier developers face heavy pressure and complex IP questions during their 30-day federal review, the open-weight world is essentially untouched. I mean, a 30-day pre-release window is completely meaningless for open models, like the recent Chinese releases, whose wastes just appear on a public hub instantly. If this U.S. designation ever grows export control consequences, the pressure lands asymmetry entirely on American labs, while the global open frontier just keeps on shipping.
Looking specifically at European buyers and vendors, there are 3 massive spillovers here. First, that 30-day federal evaluation window in the US might actually stagger global launch timings for anyone building on frontier APIs. That means users outside the US might face real delays getting the newest capabilities. Second, a covered frontier model designation by the NSA will instantly function as a global de facto capability certification, whether Washington intends it to or not. And third, it establishes a major political precedent. When Brussels next revises its rules, the normalization of classified benchmark-based gating is absolutely going to be an argument in the room.
Section 5. The contrast. We're looking at the European alternative.
So what exactly is the European philosophical response to this American classified approach? Well, instead of a classified benchmark, we're seeing the emergence of new infrastructure like Vigil-SAR Bench. This is a proposed open, replicable benchmark designed specifically for defense-relevant AI tasks. The core argument here is that openly demonstrated capability is exactly what allows institutions to evaluate vendors without needing all those complex security clearances. It's an alternative that leans heavily into transparency.
This taps into a broader sovereign measurement strategy. Europe has recently proven it's more than willing to pay for sovereign infrastructure, things like the Gigafactory or the Palantir exits. The argument going forward is that they should treat AI evaluation as public infrastructure too. By ensuring that any procurement officer, journalist, or parliament can openly inspect the benchmarks, they leverage legitimacy over speed. And this matters deeply to the future of the technology, because honestly, whoever writes the benchmark ultimately defines what the word capable actually means.
Which leaves us with this final critical thought. After August 1st, for the very first time, the official answer to the question, how capable is this AI model, is going to be a closely guarded secret that some people are simply not allowed to hear. As we watch this new era of classified AI rules unfold, we really have to ask, is sovereign public measurement the only way forward for the rest of the world? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer today. I really hope this gave you a clearer, structured view into the profound changes happening right now in AI governance. Keep asking the big questions.